There comes a time when a woman grows tired of apologizing for the very qualities that make her alive. She grows tired of lowering her voice so others will not feel challenged by her truth. Tired of hiding her joy because someone else is uncomfortable with her freedom. Tired of pretending she does not know what she knows, does not need what she needs, and does not feel what she feels. For years, she may have called this humility. She may have believed that love required her to become smaller, quieter, easier to manage. She learned to soften every honest sentence with an apology. She said, "I am sorry," before expressing a need. She apologized for asking questions, for noticing distance, for wanting consistency, for expecting a relationship to feel safe. But there is a difference between humility and disappearance. A woman is not humble because she has learned to hide. She is not loving because she tolerates being overlooked. She is not mature because she remains silent while something inside her is being slowly erased. And perhaps this is one of the deepest truths she must finally face. She was never difficult for having light. She was simply surrounded by people who benefited from her dimness. Some women do not lose confidence all at once. It happens quietly. One unanswered message, one conversation in which her feelings are dismissed, one moment when she apologizes for a wound she did not create, one relationship in which she carries all the emotional labor while the other person offers fragments and calls them love. Gradually, she begins questioning her own brightness. She wonders whether she speaks too strongly, loves too deeply, expects too much, or notices too clearly. She begins polishing a mirror someone else keeps turning away from, hoping that if she becomes beautiful enough, patient enough, agreeable enough, they will finally look. But their refusal to look was never proof that she lacked beauty. It was proof that they were unwilling or unable to meet her honestly. Rejection can wound a woman's identity because it does not merely say, "This relationship cannot continue." In the wounded mind, it can sound like, "There is something wrong with you." Silence can become even more painful. Silence gives no clear answer, so she begins supplying her own. She replays conversations at night. She searches for the moment she became less important. She examines her body, her age, her personality, her tenderness, her history. She asks herself questions that should have been directed toward the person who treated her carelessly. Why did I not matter enough? Why was I easy to leave? Why could they give someone else what I begged them to give me? These questions feel personal, but they are often built on a false foundation. The belief that another person's behavior is an accurate measurement of her value. It is not. Someone can fail to choose a remarkable woman because they fear responsibility, intimacy, accountability, or emotional depth. Someone can consume her kindness while refusing to honor it. Someone can enjoy the warmth of her presence while having no intention of protecting her heart. Their limitations may explain their choices, but those choices do not define her. A woman's light does not disappear because someone stood in front of it and complained that it was too bright. Yet healing requires more than repeating that she is worthy. She must examine the places where she learned to negotiate against herself. When did she begin apologizing for needing clarity? When did patience become permission for another person to remain inconsistent? When did protecting the relationship become more important than protecting her peace? When did she begin calling emotional starvation love simply because she occasionally received attention? These are not questions meant to shame her. Shame has already taken enough. They are questions meant to return her authority. Because overgiving is not always weakness. Sometimes it is loyalty without boundaries. Sometimes it is hope shaped by an old fear of abandonment. Sometimes it is a woman trying to earn the security she was never freely given. She kept setting the table because she believed that one day the person would come not merely because they were hungry, but because they valued the hands that prepared the meal. And each time they arrived, she convinced herself to be grateful that they came at all. This is how a woman can slowly mistake being needed for being cherished. Being needed may make her feel useful. Being cherished makes her feel safe. Being needed asks what she can provide. Being cherished considers what she requires. Being needed keeps her busy proving her place. Being cherished does not make her compete for basic care. The practical shift begins quietly. She stops apologizing before telling the truth. She may still speak gently. She may still be compassionate. She may still listen carefully, but she no longer treats her needs as offenses. Instead of saying, I am sorry, but this hurts me, she learns to say, this hurts me, and I need to pay attention to what that means. Instead of saying, maybe I am expecting too much, she asks, have I been accepting too little because I am afraid of losing what remains? Instead of begging another person to explain her worth, she allows their pattern to reveal their capacity. This is not coldness. It is emotional sobriety. A woman becomes most beautiful when she no longer spends her life asking permission to exist fully. Not because her face changes, but because she stops carrying the exhaustion of self-erasure. Her eyes become clearer. Her voice becomes steadier. Her presence becomes peaceful because she is no longer divided between what she knows and what she is willing to admit. She does not have to announce her light. She does not have to prove it. She simply stops covering it to make emotionally careless people comfortable. And this is where her return begins, not with revenge, not with performance, but with one dignified decision. She will no longer abandon herself to remain acceptable to someone else. In the next part, we must look more closely at why a woman may continue craving the approval of the very person who taught her to doubt herself, and how she begins breaking that painful attachment without losing her tenderness. Sometimes the person who made a woman doubt herself becomes the very person she longs to receive reassurance from. This is one of the cruelest contradictions of emotional neglect. The wound says, you made me feel invisible. The longing says, please be the one who finally sees me. So she remains emotionally tied not only to the person, but to the hope that one day they will correct the damage they helped create. She waits for the conversation that will explain everything, the apology that will restore her dignity. The moment they will look at her differently and admit that losing her was a mistake, but waiting for validation from someone who repeatedly withheld it can keep a woman standing outside the door of her own life. She is not merely missing them. She is missing the version of herself she believed would emerge once they finally chose her. That is why attachment can survive long after trust has died. She may know the relationship is painful. She may recognize the pattern. She may have promised herself that she will no longer respond. Yet one message, one tender memory, one brief return can awaken the old hope. And hope, when separated from evidence, can become another form of self-abandonment. Inconsistent affection creates a particular kind of emotional hunger. When care is unpredictable, the nervous system becomes alert to every small sign of warmth. A simple message can feel larger than it is. A few kind words can temporarily erase weeks of silence. She begins living from moment to moment, waiting for the next fragment. Not because she is foolish, because unpredictability trains the heart to work harder for relief. When affection comes and goes, she may believe that if she becomes more patient, more understanding, less demanding, the tenderness will return and remain. She studies the person's moods. She adjusts her needs. She carries conversations that should have required two people. She calls this love, but love should not require a woman to become an expert in surviving someone else's emotional absence. Real care does not keep her close enough to hope and distant enough to feel insecure. It does not ask her to interpret silence as death. It does not punish her for needing clarity. There is a difference between loving someone through difficulty and remaining attached to someone who uses difficulty to avoid responsibility. That distinction may hurt because it asks her to stop judging the relationship by its most beautiful moments and begin judging it by its repeated pattern. A moment can be sincere and still be insufficient. An apology can sound beautiful and still change nothing. Chemistry can be real while emotional safety is absent. Tenderness can exist without commitment, and someone may care for her in the limited way they know how, while still being incapable of offering the love she needs. Maturity means allowing two truths to exist together. Perhaps they were not entirely heartless, and perhaps staying connected to them was still destroying her self-trust. She does not have to turn them into a monster in order to admit that the relationship was harmful. She does not have to deny every good memory to honor the pain. She simply has to stop using occasional goodness as evidence that sustained neglect should be tolerated. One painful but clarifying truth is this: what someone gives occasionally cannot repair what they damage consistently. Breaking the attachment begins when she stops treating longing as instruction. She can miss someone without contacting them. She can feel love without returning to the place where she became small. She can remember the warmth without forgetting the confusion. Feelings are real, but they do not always tell her what is safe. This is where her inner shift becomes practical. When she feels the urge to reach out, she pauses and asks, what am I truly seeking? Is she seeking connection? Or is she seeking relief from the fear that she never mattered? Is she missing the person? Or is she missing the temporary comfort of being wanted again? Is she hoping for a new relationship? Or hoping the old one will finally give her a different ending? These questions are not meant to shame desire. They allow truth to stand beside it. She may begin writing down the pattern, not only the promises, but what repeatedly happened after them. Not only the tender words, but the nights she was left confused. Not only the times they returned, but the ways she lost herself each time they withdrew. Memory often protects what the heart is not ready to release. It highlights the beautiful moments and softens the cost. So she must remember with honesty, not bitterness, not revenge, honesty. The practical work of dignity may look unimpressive from the outside. It may be deleting a message she desperately wants to send. It may be refusing to explain her pain for the 10th time. It may be sitting with loneliness rather than returning to familiar disrespect. It may be accepting that closure will not arrive in the form she hoped. This is difficult because some women do not only grieve a person, they grieve the years invested, the future imagined, the patience offered, and the version of themselves that kept believing. They wonder whether leaving means all that love was wasted. It was not wasted, but it may have been placed where it could not grow. A woman can honor what she gave without continuing to give it to the same place. She can say, "My love was real," without concluding, "Therefore, I must remain." She can acknowledge that she stayed too long without treating her past self with contempt. That woman was doing the best she could with the awareness, fears, and hope she carried at the time. Healing does not require humiliation. She does not need to stand over her former self and call her weak. She needs to sit beside her and say, "You were trying to preserve love, but now we must preserve us." That is how tenderness becomes strength, not by disappearing, by changing direction. The deepest release may come when she understands that being chosen by the person who wounded her would not automatically restore what she lost. Even if they returned, her self-respect would still need rebuilding. Her boundaries would still need practice. Her inner voice would still need to be trusted again. No one can return to her what she must now learn to stop surrendering. And so she begins to loosen her grip, not because she never cared, but because she finally understands that love without self-honor becomes a place where both truth and beauty slowly suffocate. In the next part, we will look at how a woman rebuilds the trust she lost in herself after years of ignoring her instincts, lowering her standards, and apologizing for the light that was always trying to lead her home. One of the hardest losses after emotional neglect is not the relationship itself. It is the trust a woman loses in her own perception. She remembers the moments when something felt wrong, but she talked herself out of knowing. She noticed the distance. She felt the change in tone. She recognized the inconsistency between words and actions. Yet instead of trusting herself, she searched for explanations that would hurt less. Perhaps they were busy. Perhaps she was being too sensitive. Perhaps love simply required more patience. Perhaps asking questions would push them away. Over time, she learned to doubt the inner voice that had been trying to protect her. This is why betrayal can feel so disorienting. It does not only change what she believes about another person, it can make her question her own judgment. She may ask, "How did I not see it?" But often, she did see it. She simply did not feel permitted to believe what she saw. Maybe she had been taught that a good woman remains understanding, that maturity means giving endless chances, that loyalty means staying through uncertainty, that expressing discomfort makes her demanding, suspicious, or difficult. So she kept translating disrespect into misunderstanding. She turned emotional absence into stress. She called avoidance confusion. She treated inconsistency as a temporary season, even when it had become the structure of the relationship. And every time she ignored the truth to preserve the connection, her relationship with herself weakened. Self-trust is not lost because a woman lacks intelligence. It is lost when she repeatedly chooses another person's explanation over her own lived experience. She may have heard, "You are imagining things," while her body remained tense whenever the phone went silent. She may have been told nothing has changed, while affection, effort, and presence steadily disappeared. Her mind tried to accept the words. Her nervous system responded to the pattern. A woman's body often recognizes emotional danger before her hope is willing to name it. The sleeplessness, the constant checking, the heaviness before difficult conversations, the relief she feels when the person is briefly kind again. These reactions are not proof that every fear is correct, but they are signals worthy of attention. Healing begins when she stops treating her discomfort as an inconvenience and starts treating it as information. She does not need to become suspicious of everyone. She needs to become honest with herself. There's a quiet difference between fear from an old wound and distress created by a present pattern. Fear may arise even when someone behaves consistently. But when confusion is repeatedly produced by secrecy, withdrawal, mixed messages, and broken promises, the problem is not simply that she needs to become less sensitive. Sometimes sensitivity is the part of her that still refuses to become numb. Her light includes discernment. It includes the ability to notice what is not being said, to recognize when words are beautiful but behavior is careless, to feel when a room, a relationship, or a promise is no longer safe for her spirit. For too long, she may have apologized for this awareness. She may have been praised when she ignored herself and criticized when she spoke clearly. But a woman does not become peaceful by silencing the truth. She becomes peaceful by no longer building her life around what she must pretend not to know. Rebuilding self-trust begins with small acts. When she feels something, she does not immediately judge herself for feeling it. She pauses. She names the emotion without exaggerating or dismissing it. I feel anxious because communication has become unpredictable. I feel unseen because my concerns are acknowledged in words but ignored in action. I feel exhausted because I am carrying the responsibility for keeping this connection alive. Clear language brings her back to reality. Then she asks a second question. What does the pattern show? Not what was promised, not what happened during the best week, not what the person could become with enough patience. What does the repeated pattern show? Patterns reveal what isolated moments can hide. A person may speak gently during conflict and still refuse accountability. They may return whenever she begins moving on and disappear once they feel secure again. They may tell her she matters while organizing their life as though her needs are optional. Self-trust grows when she allows behavior to carry more weight than potential. This may require her to grieve, because sometimes trusting herself means admitting that the future she imagined was built on possibilities the other person never consistently supported. She was watering a garden where nothing had been planted for her. Her devotion was real. Her labor was real. But effort cannot produce mutuality where only one person is committed to growth. The practical inner shift is not to demand certainty before making any decision. It is to honor what she already knows, enough to take one protective step. She can reduce access. She can stop initiating every conversation. She can refuse to argue for basic respect. She can observe what happens when she no longer carries the entire relationship. This is not a test or manipulation. It is the ending of overfunctioning. When she stops filling every silence, she discovers whether the other person is capable of reaching for her. When she stops repairing every rupture, she sees whether they value restoration or merely convenience. When she stops explaining the same wound, she learns whether they lacked understanding or simply lacked willingness. There is dignity in allowing people to reveal themselves without interrupting the revelation. Her boundary may disappoint someone who benefited from her lack of one. That disappointment is not proof that the boundary is cruel. A boundary is not punishment. It is a truthful description of what she can no longer participate in without harming herself. She may say, I cannot continue a relationship where communication disappears whenever honesty is required. She may say, I care about you, but care is no longer enough for me to remain in confusion. She may say nothing at all and simply stop returning to a pattern that has already given her its answer. Not every truth requires another debate. Sometimes the most powerful evidence of healing is that she no longer needs the person who dismissed her perception to agree with it. She believes herself now. That belief does not make her perfect. She may misread situations. She may still become afraid. She may sometimes need time, support, and reflection before understanding what she feels. But she will no longer abandon her inner voice simply because another person finds her truth inconvenient. A woman's light is not only her warmth, beauty, intelligence, or generosity. It is also her clarity. It is the part of her that sees, the part that knows when she is being loved and when she is merely being kept available. The part that understands that peace should not require self-deception. She becomes radiant when her inner life is no longer at war with her outer choices. When what she knows, what she says, and what she permits begin to agree, something settles within her. She does not need to become louder. She becomes whole. And from that wholeness, she will begin to understand something even deeper. Protecting her light does not mean hiding it from the world. It means becoming more discerning about who is allowed close enough to influence how brightly she lives. A woman may spend years believing that protecting her light means hiding it. She becomes quieter around people who mock her joy. She downplays her intelligence so no one feels threatened. She disguises her needs as suggestions and her convictions as uncertainty. She learns how to enter a room without taking up emotional space. And because she appears calm, others may never understand the cost. They do not see how often she edits herself before speaking. They do not hear the honest answers she swallows. They do not know how exhausting it is to remain acceptable by becoming less recognizable to herself. But protection is not the same as concealment. A woman does not protect her light by dimming it. She protects it by becoming discerning about who receives access to it. Not everyone who admires her deserves closeness. Not everyone who desires her presence is prepared to respect it. Some people are drawn to a woman's warmth because they want comfort, not because they are capable of reciprocity. They enjoy her emotional intelligence, her patience, her generosity, and the way she makes difficult things feel bearable. But when she asks for the same care in return, they become distant. They loved the shelter she provided. They were not prepared to help maintain the home. This can be difficult for a compassionate woman to accept because she often measures others by the sincerity of her own heart. She assumes that because she would never knowingly exploit someone's devotion, the person she loves would not exploit hers. Yet goodness without discernment can become an open door through which entitlement repeatedly enters. Discernment does not mean expecting betrayal from everyone. It means no longer ignoring what people consistently reveal. A woman who has been emotionally neglected may confuse access with love. She may believe that being completely available proves the purity of her feelings. So she answers every call. She forgives without repair. She explains herself repeatedly. She allows someone to return without asking what has changed. She calls this grace. But grace is not the absence of standards. Compassion does not require unrestricted access. Forgiveness does not automatically restore trust. And understanding why someone hurt her does not obligate her to remain available for more of the same. One of the most mature forms of self-respect is learning that access must be shaped by behavior. Someone may be welcome in the outer rooms of her life, but no longer trusted with its most private spaces. Someone may receive kindness without receiving intimacy. Someone may be forgiven without being invited back into the position from which they harmed her. This is not punishment. It is wisdom remembering what pain taught her. For years, she may have treated every boundary as an act of rejection. She feared that saying no would make her unkind. She worried that distance would make her bitter. She believed that protecting herself meant becoming someone she did not want to be. So she remained soft without protection. But softness without boundaries does not stay soft for long. It becomes exhaustion. It becomes resentment. It becomes the silent anger of a woman who keeps giving what she no longer has. Protected softness is different. It can remain generous because it is no longer being constantly drained. It can remain tender because it is not required to tolerate disrespect. It can remain open because it knows how to close the door when truth demands it. Her beauty becomes deeper when her kindness is no longer separated from wisdom. She no longer says yes while her whole body is asking for rest. She no longer offers emotional access to someone who appears only when they are lonely. She no longer mistakes familiarity for safety. And she stops apologizing when her standards reveal that certain people were only comfortable with her when she had none. The practical shift begins with one question. What has this person's behavior earned? Not what does she hope they will become. Not what did they promise when they feared losing her. Not how much history do they share. What has their repeated behavior earned? Perhaps it has earned a conversation. Perhaps it has earned distance. Perhaps it has earned another opportunity, but with clear conditions and visible change. Perhaps it has earned no further access at all. This question returns her decisions to reality, because history is not a permanent pass into her future. Love is not a license to cross her boundaries, and time invested does not require more time sacrificed. She may still feel guilty when she changes the terms of access. Guilt often appears when a woman begins doing something healthier than what others have come to expect. But guilt is not always evidence that she is doing wrong. Sometimes it is simply the discomfort of no longer performing the role that kept everyone else comfortable. She can allow the feeling without obeying it. She can say, I feel guilty, but I am not guilty of cruelty. I feel sad, but sadness does not mean my decision is mistaken. I miss them, but missing them does not make the relationship safe. These distinctions protect her from returning to harm merely to escape temporary discomfort. A boundary may hurt before it heals. It may feel lonely before it feels peaceful. Self-respect does not always arrive as strength. Sometimes it first appears as grief. The grief of realizing that certain relationships could continue only while she remained willing to betray herself. That truth can break her heart, but it can also release it. A woman becomes most beautiful when she no longer apologizes for the light that reveals what cannot remain near her. Her light is not merely what attracts people, it is what helps her see them clearly. It exposes manipulation disguised as affection. It recognizes attention that appears only when she begins pulling away. It distinguishes someone who loves her from someone who simply dislikes losing access to her. Her brightness is not an invitation for everyone to come closer. It is also the wisdom by which she decides who may stay. There is no dignity in offering sacred access to people who repeatedly treat it as ordinary. And there is no cruelty in requiring those who enter her life to respect the life within her. She does not need walls around her soul. She needs doors. Doors that can open with trust. Doors that can close with truth. Doors that she, not her fear of abandonment, has the authority to guard. As she learns this, her beauty changes. It becomes less anxious, less performative, less dependent on being wanted. She begins to understand that being desired is not the same as being honored, and that realization will lead her toward an even deeper freedom. Learning to stop measuring her beauty by attention, comparison, age, or the gaze of those who never truly saw her. Many women learn to measure their beauty by attention long before they learn to measure their lives by peace. They notice who looks at them, who chooses them, who praises them, who returns, and who suddenly becomes distant. They begin reading other people's reactions as though those reactions are mirrors. When attention is present, she feels visible. When it disappears, she wonders whether something in her has faded. This is how another person's gaze can quietly become the judge of a woman's light. She may not admit it aloud. She may appear confident, accomplished, and emotionally mature. Yet privately, she compares herself with the woman who was chosen after her. Was she younger, more beautiful, less complicated, easier to love? She studies someone else's appearance while ignoring the emotional limitations of the person who caused the wound. She assumes that being replaced means being surpassed, but people do not always choose what is more valuable. Sometimes they choose what asks less of them, what does not challenge their avoidance, what allows them to repeat familiar patterns without accountability. Someone choosing another path is not a final verdict on her beauty. It may simply reveal the kind of relationship they were capable of sustaining. Still, the wound feels personal. A woman who has been rejected may stand before a mirror and search her face for an explanation. She notices every line, every change, every sign that time has passed. She compares herself not only with other women, but with earlier versions of herself. She wonders whether she was more lovable when she was younger, quieter, thinner, more forgiving, or less certain of what she required. But beauty built entirely upon approval becomes a fragile home. It must be constantly repaired by compliments. It trembles when attention shifts. It collapses whenever someone walks away. A deeper beauty begins when a woman no longer requires another person's desire to confirm that she is alive. This does not mean she stops enjoying admiration. It does not mean she pretends rejection does not hurt. It means attention is no longer allowed to define what she sees when she looks at herself. She begins asking different questions. Not, do they still want me? But, do I feel safe, respected, and honest in their presence? Not, why did they choose her? But, why am I using their decision to punish myself? Not, what does she have that I do not? But, what have I forgotten about myself while staring at someone else? Comparison rarely gives a woman truth. It gives her fragments. She sees another woman's appearance, but not her private pain. She sees a photograph, but not the full relationship. She sees the public choice, but not the emotional reality behind it. Then she uses incomplete information to construct a case against herself. That case may sound convincing because it is built from old fears. The fear of aging, the fear of becoming invisible, the fear that she has missed her chance to be deeply loved, the fear that all her wisdom, loyalty, tenderness, and growth will matter less than youth or novelty. These fears deserve compassion, but they should not be allowed to become prophecy. A woman's beauty does not move in one direction and then disappear. It changes its language. At one stage, it may speak through freshness and possibility. Later, it speaks through discernment, through the calm of a woman who no longer chases mixed signals, through the depth in her eyes because she has survived what once nearly convinced her to abandon herself, through the way she enters a room without asking permission to belong there. There is beauty in a woman who knows that attention can be loud and still be empty. There is beauty in the woman who no longer mistakes pursuit for devotion. Anyone can admire her for a moment. The more important question is whether they can honor her consistently. Attention is easy to offer when it requires nothing. Honor appears in responsibility, truth, presence, and care. A person may praise her beauty while ignoring her needs. They may desire her body while dismissing her voice. They may fear losing her while refusing to treat her well enough to keep her. This is why being wanted should never be confused with being valued. Desire may pull someone toward her. Character determines how they treat her once they arrive. The practical inner shift begins when she reduces the amount of authority she gives to external reactions. She notices when she changes her appearance to provoke regret rather than express herself. She notices when she posts something mainly to see whether a certain person is watching. She notices when silence from them changes the way she feels about her own face. Then she gently returns to herself. She may ask, what would I choose today if no one from my past could see it? What would she wear? Where would she go? How would she carry herself? What would she create if she were no longer trying to prove that someone had made a mistake by losing her? These questions are not small. They reveal how much of her life may still be organized around an audience that no longer deserves a seat. Her beauty becomes free when it is no longer a performance for people who failed to appreciate her humanity. She may dress beautifully because it brings her joy. She may care for her body because it has carried her through grief. She may rest because exhaustion is not a badge of loyalty. She may celebrate her age because every year represents a life she was strong enough to continue living. She does not have to reject beauty in order to reclaim it. She simply stops using beauty as a plea. She no longer says through her appearance, "Please see what you lost." She begins saying through her life, "I finally see what I nearly lost in myself." That is a different kind of radiance. It does not compete. It does not beg. It does not collapse when someone else enters the room. A woman is most beautiful when her light is no longer controlled by who notices it. When she no longer apologizes for the space she occupies, the wisdom she carries, the standards she has developed, or the years that have shaped her. She understands that youth may attract attention, but wholeness creates presence, and presence cannot be copied. It is formed by every truth she finally accepted, every boundary she learned to hold, and every moment she chose not to return to the place where she disappeared. In the next part, she must face another difficult truth. Reclaiming her light may change her relationships, because some people will celebrate her healing, while others will resent losing the version of her they could easily control. Healing changes the shape of a woman's relationships. Not because she becomes cruel, not because she thinks she is better than anyone, but because the version of her who tolerated confusion, over-explained her pain, and gave endless access is no longer available in the same way. Some people will call this growth. Others will call it distance. The difference often depends on what they were receiving from her lack of boundaries. When a woman begins honoring her own light, she may discover that certain relationships were built around her self-erasure. They functioned well only when she remained agreeable, endlessly forgiving, emotionally available, and afraid to disappoint anyone. Her silence was called peace. Her overgiving was called kindness. Her exhaustion was called strength. And the moment she begins asking for mutual care, the relationship feels different. Not because she destroyed it, because she stopped carrying it alone. This realization can be painful. A woman may have believed she was deeply loved, only to discover that some people were more attached to her usefulness than to her whole humanity. They loved the advice she gave, the comfort she provided, the problems she solved, the way she made room for everyone else's emotions while hiding her own. But when she became tired, honest, or unavailable, their warmth changed. Suddenly she was difficult, selfish, too serious. Not the woman she used to be. Perhaps they are right about one thing. She is not the woman she used to be. The former version of her apologized for needing rest. She made herself responsible for everyone's comfort. She confused keeping the peace with being loved. The woman she is becoming understands that peace purchased through self-betrayal is not peace. It is silence with a cost. There may be grief in seeing this clearly. She may miss the closeness, even if that closeness was uneven. She may long for the familiar conversations, the history, the private jokes, the sense of belonging. Growth does not erase attachment. Sometimes it simply reveals what attachment was asking her to sacrifice. This is why reclaiming herself may feel lonely before it feels liberating. She is standing between two worlds. She can no longer return comfortably to relationships that require her to shrink. But she may not yet have built the community that can receive her as she is now. That middle space can feel empty. It is tempting to believe she has made a mistake. She may wonder whether she should soften the boundary, ignore the old pattern, or apologize just to restore connection. But restoring connection is not always the same as restoring health. A relationship can return to normal while a woman returns to abandoning herself. The practical inner shift is learning to tolerate the discomfort that comes when others are disappointed by her growth. Their disappointment does not automatically mean she has become unkind. Their anger does not prove she has become unfair. Their withdrawal does not mean her truth was wrong. Sometimes people resist a boundary because it forces them to confront the privileges they enjoyed when she had none. She can listen to criticism without surrendering her judgment. She can ask herself honest questions. Did I communicate with respect? Am I protecting myself? Or am I trying to punish someone? Is this boundary connected to a repeated pattern? Would keeping this relationship unchanged require me to ignore what I know? These questions keep her accountable without returning her to self-doubt, because boundaries should not become weapons. They are not threats designed to force another person to behave. A boundary says, this is what I will do to remain honest and emotionally safe. It does not say you must change so that I never feel discomfort. The distinction matters. She is not reclaiming her light to control others. She is reclaiming it so she no longer hands control of her inner peace to them. Some relationships may adjust. People who truly care may feel surprised, but they will become curious. They may ask what she needs. They may acknowledge where they have taken too much. They may learn to meet her with greater respect. Healthy love does not require perfection. It requires willingness. Other relationships may not survive. Not because there was never affection, but because affection was not strong enough to support equality. When she stops overfunctioning, there may be nothing left holding the relationship together. That can be heartbreaking, but it is also clarifying. A bridge that collapses when one woman stops carrying every stone was never being maintained by two people. She must resist the urge to blame herself for every ending. Some endings are not evidence of failure. They are evidence that reality is no longer being hidden. This does not make loss painless. She may still cry. She may still question herself late at night. She may still feel the old fear that becoming fully herself will leave her alone. But loneliness is not always a sign that she should return. Sometimes loneliness is the quiet room where a woman learns that her own company is safer than connection built on self-neglect. She begins filling that room differently. She rests without apologizing. She spends time with people who do not require performance. She notices which conversations leave her grounded and which leave her diminished. She stops chasing those who only respond when she withdraws. And she allows mutuality to become a standard, not a luxury. This is how her light becomes relationally honest. She does not shine to dominate the room. She shines because she is no longer using darkness to keep everyone else comfortable. The people meant for healthy closeness will not require her to become less aware, less honest, less joyful, or less alive. They may challenge her. They may disagree with her, but they will not need her disappearance in order to feel secure. A woman does not lose love by becoming more truthful. She loses relationships that depended on her confusion. That truth may ache before it frees her. Yet every time she survives another person's disappointment without betraying herself, her dignity grows stronger. She learns that she can be misunderstood and remain steady. She can be missed and still stay gone. She can be loved and still say no. And she can release a relationship without denying that it once mattered. In the next part, she will begin learning how to live beyond reaction, how to stop building her future around proving what others lost, and start creating a life that feels beautiful, even when no one from her past is watching. There comes a point when a woman must ask herself whether she is truly moving forward or simply moving in a way she hopes someone from her past will notice. The distinction is quiet, but important. She may look healed from the outside. She dresses differently. She speaks with more confidence. She fills her days with activity and tells herself she no longer cares. Yet beneath the progress, part of her may still be performing for an invisible audience. She wants them to see that she survived. She wants them to regret what they lost. She wants her happiness to become evidence that they misjudged her value. This desire is understandable. After being ignored, rejected, or replaced, a woman may long for the person who diminished her to finally recognize her light. She imagines the day they will see her flourishing and understand that she was never ordinary. But a life created to inspire someone else's regret is still a life organized around them. They may be gone, yet their gaze remains in the room. She chooses what to share based on whether they might see it. She measures her growth by whether they return. She interprets their silence as another judgment. Even her healing becomes a conversation with someone who is no longer participating. This is not freedom. It is attachment wearing more beautiful clothes. A woman does not reclaim her light merely by proving that she can shine without someone. She reclaims it when she no longer needs their reaction to make the shining meaningful. This may be one of the most difficult stages of restoration. Anger gave her energy. Disappointment gave her direction. The desire to prove herself helped her leave the bed, make plans, and remember parts of herself she had neglected. There is no need to shame that season. Sometimes the first steps toward freedom are imperfect, but anger cannot become her permanent compass. Eventually, she must stop building a future as a response to the past. She must ask, what would my life look like if I were no longer trying to send a message? What would she pursue if no one were watching? What would she release if she did not need to appear unbothered? What would she admit if she no longer feared that sadness would make her look weak? Perhaps she would confess that she still misses the person sometimes. Perhaps she would stop forcing herself into experiences she does not truly enjoy. Perhaps she would rest instead of filling every hour to avoid feeling the emptiness. Perhaps she would allow healing to become private. There is dignity in no longer turning personal restoration into a public argument. She does not need to display every victory. She does not need to hide every difficult day. She does not need to become a symbol of perfect strength. She is allowed to be a human being whose growth is uneven, honest, and still worthy. Some days she will feel powerful. Other days, an old memory will return with surprising weight. That does not mean she is back at the beginning. Healing is not measured by never feeling pain again. It is measured by what she does when the pain arrives. Does she abandon herself? Does she return to the person who created the confusion? Does she turn grief into evidence that she made the wrong choice? Or does she sit beside herself with the steadiness she once begged someone else to provide? This is the practical shift. She begins building rituals that are not connected to being seen. She takes a walk without photographing it. She wears something beautiful because she enjoys how it feels. She begins a project that has nothing to do with proving her success. She spends an evening in silence without checking whether someone has viewed her life from a distance. These small acts return ownership to her. They remind her that an experience does not become valuable only after it has been witnessed. Her life is not a message addressed to those who mishandled her. It is a home she must now learn to inhabit. For years, she may have stood outside the door of that home, waiting for another person to invite her in. She believed being chosen would grant her belonging. Now, she understands that the door was always hers. She enters slowly. She notices what brings calm rather than excitement mixed with anxiety. She pays attention to who allows her nervous system to rest. She begins to prefer consistency over intensity, sincerity over charm, and mutual effort over dramatic promises. This may feel less intoxicating than the love she once chased, but peace is often quieter than emotional hunger. A healthy life may not produce the same highs and lows that once made her feel intensely alive. At first, steadiness can feel unfamiliar. She may mistake the absence of chaos for the absence of passion. But she is learning another language, a language in which care does not disappear to increase its value, a language in which affection is not used as a reward, a language in which she does not have to become distressed before someone reassures her. This new life may seem ordinary to those addicted to drama. To her, it becomes sacred. She begins measuring beauty differently. Beauty becomes waking without dread. Beauty becomes saying what she means without rehearsing an apology. Beauty becomes eating a peaceful meal without checking her phone. Beauty becomes laughter that is not performed. Beauty becomes the ability to remember what happened without reopening the door. Her light grows steadier because it is no longer fueled by reaction. She does not need to glow brighter because someone once failed to see her. She glows because she is alive, because she has wisdom to offer, because her presence belongs fully to her again. A life built to prove someone wrong still gives them authority. A life built from truth gives that authority back to the woman who owns it. This does not mean the past becomes meaningless. It becomes material. She uses it to understand herself, strengthen her boundaries, and recognize what she will no longer call love. But she stops using pain as the architect of every decision. Her future deserves more than being a monument to what wounded her. It deserves curiosity, joy, rest, work that matters, relationships that do not require constant interpretation, and moments so deeply her own that she forgets to wonder who might be watching. As she begins living this way, another truth will rise before her. Returning to herself is not only about leaving behind the people who dimmed her, it is also about meeting the woman she became while surviving them and learning to love her without shame. Sometimes, the woman she struggles most to forgive is not the one who hurt her. It is herself. She remembers how long she stayed, how many times she accepted the apology without change, how often she silenced her instincts, lowered her standards, and returned to a place that had already shown her what it was. She may look back with the clarity she has now and feel ashamed of the woman she was then. She asks, Why did I allow that? Why did I keep believing? Why did I give so much to someone who offered so little? These questions can become another form of punishment. The relationship may have ended, but she continues the harm by speaking to herself with the same lack of tenderness she once endured from someone else. She calls her past self foolish, weak, desperate. She feels embarrassed by the messages she sent, the excuses she made, the nights she waited, and the ways she tried to earn what should have been offered freely. But healing cannot be built on contempt for the woman who survived. She does not need another voice telling her that she should have known better. She needs to understand why she could not act on what she knew. Perhaps she stayed because she had been taught that love meant enduring. Perhaps she feared that starting again would be harder than continuing to hurt. Perhaps moments of affection kept renewing her hope. Perhaps she had invested years, built a family, carried responsibilities, or woven her identity into the relationship so deeply that leaving felt like losing more than one person. Perhaps she was emotionally exhausted. Perhaps she was not yet ready to face the truth that the future she had imagined would never arrive. Understanding does not erase responsibility. It gives responsibility somewhere honest to begin. She can admit, I betrayed my own needs, without concluding, I am unworthy of forgiveness. She can acknowledge that she remained too long without reducing her entire character to that decision. She can grieve what she tolerated while still honoring the courage it took to finally see clearly. The woman she was did not have all the wisdom the woman she is becoming now carries. Wisdom often arrives after the cost has been paid. That does not make the cost meaningless. It means the lesson was learned through living, not through theory. There's a particular cruelty in expecting a past version of herself to act with knowledge she had not yet fully gained. She did not remain because she enjoyed suffering. She remained because hope was still louder than evidence, because attachment was stronger than self-trust, because she believed love could be repaired if she became more patient, more forgiving, or less demanding. She was not trying to destroy herself. She was trying to save something she believed was sacred. The painful truth is that she sometimes sacrificed herself in the process. Now she must stop confusing accountability with self-condemnation. Accountability says, I must understand what happened so I do not repeat it. Self-condemnation says, what happened proves there is something permanently wrong with me. One creates wisdom, the other creates shame. And shame rarely protects a woman from returning to unhealthy patterns. It often makes her more vulnerable to them. When she believes she has already failed herself beyond repair, she may accept further mistreatment because some part of her no longer expects better. This is why self-forgiveness is not sentimental. It is protective. It restores the belief that her future can be different from her past. The practical shift begins when she changes the way she remembers herself. Instead of saying, I was pathetic for reaching out again, she might say, I was struggling with separation and trying to soothe a wound in the only way I understood then. Instead of saying, I wasted years, she might say, I gave years to something I hoped would become mutual. Now I will let those years teach me what hope alone cannot sustain. Instead of saying, I should have left sooner, she might say, I left when the truth became stronger than my fear. These are not excuses. They are accurate, humane language. She can take responsibility without becoming her own enemy. Perhaps she should write a letter to the woman she was, not to glorify her choices, but to recognize her humanity. She might tell her, I know why you stayed. I know you were afraid. I know you believed another chance might bring back the person you first loved. I know you confused endurance with devotion, but I also know you kept a small part of yourself alive, even when you could barely hear her. That small part is the reason we are here now. A woman's light is not proven by never having become lost. Sometimes it is revealed by the courage with which she returns. She may still feel grief when she remembers how much she surrendered. She may mourn the opportunities, confidence, friendships, or peace she lost while trying to hold the relationship together. That grief deserves space. But grief should not become a courtroom where her past self is endlessly prosecuted. She cannot rebuild dignity while despising the woman whose life she is rebuilding. The person she is becoming stands on the shoulders of every version of herself who endured, questioned, hoped, collapsed, and rose again. Even her mistakes carried information. They showed her where her boundaries were weak, where fear spoke louder than truth, where loneliness made inconsistency appear valuable, where she confused someone's potential with their actual capacity. Now she knows more, and knowing more asks her to live differently. That is how she honors the woman she was. Not by pretending the past was acceptable, not by returning to it, but by using what it taught her to create safer choices in the present. She stops offering endless chances without evidence of change. She stops treating her longing as a reason to reopen closed doors. She stops making permanent decisions in moments of loneliness. She stops apologizing for the wisdom that pain placed in her hands. This is self-forgiveness in action. It is not merely saying, I forgive myself. It is refusing to abandon herself in the same way again. The woman she once was does not need to be erased for the new woman to emerge. She needs to be gathered, understood, held with honesty, integrated into a larger story where her pain is real, but it is not the final definition of her life. She becomes beautiful in a deeper way when she can look back without turning away from herself. When she can say, I did things from fear that I would not do from wisdom now. When she can mourn without humiliation. When she can remember without allowing memory to decide what she deserves. She is no longer the woman waiting to be forgiven by someone who harmed her. She is becoming the woman who grants herself permission to live beyond what happened. And as that forgiveness takes root, she begins to understand that her light was never destroyed. It was covered by shame, fear, and years of trying to become acceptable. In the next part, she will begin uncovering that light through daily acts of self-honor, learning that confidence is not something she performs, but something she builds each time she keeps a promise to herself. Confidence does not always return as a feeling. Sometimes it returns as a decision a woman keeps making before she fully believes in herself again. She wakes up and does what she said she would do. She leaves the message unanswered because she knows responding would reopen a wound. She rests when her body asks for rest. She tells the truth without decorating it to make it easier for someone else to hear. These choices may appear small, but every promise she keeps to herself repairs something. For a long time, she may have believed confidence meant walking into a room without fear, speaking boldly, looking beautiful, appearing certain, but performance can imitate confidence. A woman may look strong while privately abandoning herself in every important decision. Real confidence is quieter. It is the trust that grows when her actions begin to match what she knows. It is the inner evidence that she will no longer leave herself alone in moments of pressure. A woman loses confidence when she repeatedly teaches herself that her own needs can be postponed, her instincts can be ignored, and her boundaries can be removed whenever someone she loves becomes uncomfortable. Each time she says no and then changes it to yes from guilt, she weakens her own word. Each time she recognizes disrespect and stays without addressing it, she learns that her pain will not protect her. Each time she promises herself that this will be the last time, then returns without anything changing, she becomes less certain that she can rely on herself. This is not a reason for shame. It is an explanation for why confidence cannot be restored through compliments alone. Someone may tell her she is beautiful. Someone may praise her strength. Someone may admire the life she has built. But if she does not trust herself to act when truth becomes uncomfortable, praise will only reach the surface. Self-confidence is built through self-loyalty. It grows when she becomes the person who listens when her inner voice speaks. This may begin with ordinary promises. I will not check their page tonight. I will not explain my boundary again. I will eat before I become exhausted. I will make the appointment I have been avoiding. I will give myself time before answering a request. I will no longer agree simply because I fear disappointing someone. These promises are not glamorous. They may never be witnessed, but they return authority to her life. A woman becomes less anxious when she knows she will not betray herself to keep someone else close. Her nervous system begins to settle because it is no longer waiting for her to ignore another warning. Her body learns that discomfort will be acknowledged. Her heart learns that longing will not be allowed to make every decision. Her mind learns that reality will not be rewritten to preserve fantasy. This is how self-respect becomes visible, not in what she announces, in what she consistently protects. There may still be days when she breaks a promise to herself. She may answer the call. She may revisit the old conversation. She may say yes when she meant no. Growth does not require her to become flawless, but it does require her to become honest quickly. Instead of turning one mistake into a complete collapse, she asks, what happened inside me? Was she lonely? Afraid? Seeking reassurance? Did guilt override her judgment? Did the old hope return? The answer gives her something useful. She does not need to punish herself. She needs to understand the moment well enough to make the next one different. A woman who is rebuilding confidence must stop using perfection as the price of self-respect. She is allowed to learn slowly. She is allowed to correct herself without hatred. She is allowed to begin again without calling the previous effort meaningless. One broken promise does not erase every promise she kept. The practical shift is to make her commitment specific enough to practice. Instead of saying, I will never let anyone hurt me again, she might say, when someone repeatedly dismisses my concerns, I will stop arguing for my right to be heard and reconsider their access to me. Instead of saying, I will always choose myself, she might say, before agreeing to something important, I will pause long enough to hear my honest answer. Instead of saying, I will become confident, she might say, today I will do one thing that proves I can rely on my own word. Specific choices build a life. Vague promises often disappear under pressure. She may create a simple practice at the end of each day. Not a list of everything she failed to do, a record of where she honored herself. Perhaps she stopped a conversation that became disrespectful. Perhaps she asked for help. Perhaps she did not apologize for needing time. Perhaps she allowed someone to misunderstand her without rushing to defend herself. These moments matter because a woman often overlooks her own growth while remaining painfully aware of every imperfection. She must learn to witness herself, not with vanity, with accuracy. She has spent enough years asking others to confirm that she matters. Now she begins gathering her own evidence that she can endure loneliness without returning to harm. Evidence that she can disappoint someone and survive. Evidence that she can feel grief without surrendering her standards. Evidence that she can be gentle and still remain firm. This is confidence grounded in truth. It does not need to be loud because it is not asking to be believed. A woman who trusts herself carries a different presence. She no longer rushes to answer every accusation. She no longer explains her worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. She listens carefully, but she does not hand every opinion equal authority. She knows that another person's disappointment may be real without becoming her responsibility to erase. She knows that being called difficult does not mean she is wrong. Sometimes it means she has stopped being convenient. Her light becomes steadier each time she honors a promise no one else knows she made. She may not feel transformed in the moment, but one day she notices that she no longer checks the door for someone who left. She notices that silence does not frighten her as it once did. She notices that she can say no without spending the entire night rehearsing an apology. She notices that her life feels less like something happening to her and more like something she is consciously shaping. That is the beauty of self-trust. It is not dramatic. It is cumulative. One truthful choice, one protected boundary, one moment of remaining beside herself, and then another. The woman who no longer apologizes for her light does not merely admire herself. She becomes dependable to herself. She knows that when darkness enters the room, she will not be the one who switches off her own lamp to make it welcome. In the next part, she will learn how this renewed confidence changes the way she receives love, why healthy love may feel unfamiliar after inconsistency, and how to recognize care that does not require her to disappear. Healthy love may feel unfamiliar to a woman who has spent years surviving inconsistency. It may even feel strangely quiet. There is no dramatic disappearance followed by an emotional return. No constant guessing. No need to study every message for hidden meaning. No sudden warmth that arrives only after days of distance. At first, this steadiness can confuse her. She may mistake calm for a lack of chemistry. She may wonder why she does not feel the same intense pull she once called passion. But sometimes what she called passion was anxiety waiting to be relieved. Sometimes the strongest attraction was not proof of deep compatibility. It was the nervous system recognizing a familiar wound and hoping this time it would end differently. A woman who has been kept uncertain may become accustomed to earning closeness. She feels most valuable when she is trying to win someone back, repair a distance, or prove that she is worth staying for. The work gives her a role. The struggle gives her a purpose. So when someone offers care without making her chase it, she may not know what to do. She may search for the hidden condition. She may expect the affection to disappear. She may create distance before the other person can. This does not mean she is incapable of receiving love. It means her heart learned to associate love with vigilance. Healing asks her to learn another experience. Love can be present without being pursued. Care can remain steady without being earned through suffering. A person can know her needs and not treat them as burdens. A relationship can feel safe without becoming dull. The woman she is becoming must learn to distinguish peace from emotional emptiness. Peace does not leave her confused. Peace does not require her to silence herself. Peace does not make her feel that one wrong sentence will cause the entire connection to disappear. Healthy love allows her to remain visible. She can express disappointment without being punished by withdrawal. She can ask questions without being accused of creating problems. She can say no without fearing that affection will be taken away. There is room for her whole humanity. Not only the beautiful parts, not only the patient parts, not only the parts that are easy to love. Healthy love does not require perfection. It does not mean conflict never happens. It means conflict does not become a weapon used to make her feel disposable. There is repair. There is accountability. There is a willingness to remain present when the conversation becomes uncomfortable. This may be one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. A person does not disappear simply because truth has entered the room. A woman who has lived through emotional neglect must be careful not to confuse words with capacity. Someone may say they love her. The deeper question is whether they possess the emotional ability to love her responsibly. Can they communicate when they are overwhelmed? Can they acknowledge harm without turning the conversation against her? Can they make changes, not merely promises? Can they respect her boundaries without treating them as rejection? Can they celebrate her light without trying to control it? Love is not only a feeling someone has toward her. It is the quality of care they repeatedly practice around her. This is why she must stop choosing relationships based only on how intensely she feels. Intensity can be beautiful, but intensity without safety can become another form of instability. She needs to ask what the relationship is teaching her nervous system. Is she learning that love is dependable? Or is she becoming more anxious, watchful, and uncertain? Does she feel free to be honest? Or is she constantly editing herself to preserve the connection? Does she feel respected during disagreement? Or only desired when she is easy? These questions do not make love mechanical. They make it truthful. The practical inner shift is to slow down enough to observe. She does not have to decide someone's entire place in her life based on early chemistry. She can allow consistency to reveal character. She can watch how they handle disappointment, how they speak about people who can no longer benefit them, whether their actions remain kind when no reward is immediate, whether their interest deepens into responsibility. Time reveals what charm often hides. A woman who has reclaimed her self-respect no longer rushes to hand someone the most vulnerable parts of her simply because they appear interested. Attention is not yet trust. Attraction is not yet safety. Promises are not yet evidence. She can remain open without becoming unguarded. She can enjoy connection without constructing an entire future from a few tender moments. This is not cynicism. It is paced intimacy. Healthy love will not punish her for moving carefully. A person capable of care will understand that trust grows through repeated experience. They will not demand access she has not freely chosen to give. They will not use pressure, guilt, or urgency to overcome her boundaries. They will allow their actions to speak, and she must also allow herself to receive. Receiving may be difficult after years of overgiving. When someone offers support, her first instinct may be to refuse. When they ask what she needs, she may say nothing because need once made her vulnerable to disappointment. But love cannot become mutual if she continues performing complete self-sufficiency. She does not need to become dependent. She needs to become honest. She can accept help without owing her entire identity in return. She can receive care without immediately trying to repay it. She can let someone show up and resist the urge to explain why they should not have bothered. A woman who apologizes for every kindness she receives is still carrying the belief that care must be earned. She is learning that she does not have to make herself useful before she is worthy of tenderness. This may feel uncomfortable. She may feel exposed when someone is consistent. Safety can reveal how tired she has been. When the struggle stops, grief sometimes rises. She may suddenly feel the weight of all the years when love required so much labor. She may mourn how little she accepted. She may realize how often she called basic consideration extraordinary because she had become accustomed to neglect. That grief is not a reason to reject healthy care. It is evidence that her standards are awakening. She can let the contrast teach her. Not every calm relationship will be right for her. Not every consistent person will become a true partner. But she no longer needs chaos to feel chosen. She no longer needs to be wounded before she feels wanted. She no longer calls emotional confusion a sign that the connection is deep. Her light does not need to be tested through suffering. It needs to be welcomed with maturity. A healthy person will not ask her to apologize for shining. They will not compete with her growth, resent her boundaries, or require her to remain insecure so they can feel powerful. They will understand that loving her means honoring the woman she has fought to become. And she, in return, will learn that receiving love does not mean surrendering herself. It means bringing herself fully into the relationship with her wisdom, tenderness, history, needs, limits, and light intact. In the next part, she will begin to see that her beauty is not only revealed in whom she allows to love her, but in the life she creates when she finally stops waiting for love to grant her permission to begin. A woman may postpone her own life without realizing she is waiting to be chosen, waiting for the relationship to become clear, waiting for someone to return with the apology she deserved, waiting for love to arrive and confirm that she is still desirable, still worthy, still capable of beginning again. Years can pass inside this kind of waiting. She continues working, caring for others, paying bills, showing up for family, smiling when necessary. From the outside, Her life appears to be moving, but inside, one part of her remains standing beside an unfinished story. She tells herself she will feel alive again when someone finally loves her correctly. She will travel when she has a partner. She will celebrate when there is someone beside her. She will become fully visible when she is certain that her light will be received. Until then, she treats her life as a waiting room. But her life is not preparation for another person's arrival. It is already happening. This truth can feel both freeing and painful because she may suddenly recognize how many decisions were shaped by absence, how often she withheld joy because there was no one to witness it, how many experiences she postponed because she believed they would matter more if shared with someone who loved her. The desire for companionship is not weakness. A mature woman can value partnership, affection, and emotional intimacy without being ashamed of that longing. But longing becomes costly when it convinces her that the present is merely an incomplete version of life. She is not half a person waiting to be completed. She is a whole woman whose life may still include unmet desires. Wholeness does not mean she never feels lonely. It means loneliness no longer has the authority to decide whether her life is meaningful. There is a difference between wanting love and placing her existence on hold until it appears. One keeps her heart open. The other keeps her imprisoned. Perhaps she has avoided certain places because couples will be there. Perhaps she has stopped dressing beautifully because there is no one she wants to impress. Perhaps she has abandoned interests that once made her feel alive because grief consumed the energy she needed to pursue them. This is understandable. Pain narrows attention. When a woman is emotionally wounded, survival may become her only project. Joy can feel distant, even inappropriate. She may believe she must become completely healed before she is permitted to enjoy anything again. But healing does not always come before living. Sometimes healing happens because she begins living, not recklessly, not as a distraction, but through small encounters with the world that remind her she is more than the relationship that failed. The practical shift is to identify what she has been postponing until she feels chosen. Perhaps it is a class, a journey, a creative project, a quiet evening at a beautiful place she assumes should be shared. Perhaps it is changing her home, learning something new, renewing an old friendship, or allowing herself to be photographed without wondering whether someone from her past will see. She does not need to transform her entire life at once. She can choose one postponed desire and move toward it, not to prove independence, not to declare that she needs no one, but to remind herself that her days are worthy of being inhabited now. A woman does not betray her longing for love by building a meaningful life without it. She creates a life into which healthy love may someday enter without becoming its sole source of meaning. This matters because when one person becomes responsible for all her joy, purpose, belonging, and validation, love begins carrying a weight no relationship can safely hold. She may become afraid to lose them, not only because she loves them, but because losing them would appear to mean losing her entire life. A rich inner and outer life changes this. It does not make heartbreak impossible. It gives her more places within herself to return to. She has work that reflects her values. Friendships that are not abandoned whenever romance appears. Interests that do not require anyone's approval. quiet routines that make her feel grounded, a relationship with her own mind that is not built entirely around analyzing another person. This is not emotional distance. It is foundation. Love should add rooms to her life, not become the only building standing. The woman who no longer apologizes for her light allows that light to touch more than romance. She brings it into her work, her home, her conversations, her creativity, her choices. She stops acting as though feminine beauty exists only when it is desired by another person. Her beauty is also present when she solves a problem with wisdom, when she comforts a friend without abandoning herself, when she laughs alone in her kitchen, when she completes something difficult, when she wakes on a quiet morning and realizes the day belongs to her. These moments may not look dramatic, but they restore her relationship with time. She no longer sees each year as evidence that love has not arrived. She sees it as a life she has been entrusted to live. Age stops becoming a countdown. It becomes depth. She does not measure herself against an imagined schedule of when she should have been married, healed, successful, certain, or free from longing. A woman can be wise and still unfinished. She can be strong and still desire tenderness. She can build a beautiful life and still hope to share it. These truths do not contradict each other. What changes is that hope no longer requires self-neglect. She no longer accepts poor treatment because she fears time is running out. She no longer mistakes urgency for compatibility. She no longer lets loneliness negotiate standards that wisdom worked so hard to create. A lonely evening is temporary. The consequences of inviting the wrong person into her life can last much longer. So she learns to sit with the evening. She makes the meal. She plays the music. She calls someone safe. She reads, creates, rests, or simply allows the silence to exist without interpreting it as proof that she is unwanted. The silence becomes less hostile when she stops filling it with judgments about herself. It becomes space. And in that space, she begins hearing desires that were buried beneath the constant effort to be loved. She remembers what interests her, what challenges her, what kind of beauty she wants to create, what she would like her days to contain, even if no one applauds them. Her life slowly becomes more than recovery. It becomes expression. That may be one of the clearest signs that she is returning to herself. She is no longer merely trying not to hurt. She is becoming curious about what it means to be alive. A woman's light is most beautiful when it is no longer waiting for permission to illuminate her own path. She does not need a witness before she begins. She does not need to be chosen before she celebrates. She does not need another person's arrival to prove that her life has finally started. It started long ago, and it is asking her to come fully into it. In the next part, she will learn how to release the shame of being seen, how to speak, create, succeed, and take up space without apologizing when her growth makes others uncomfortable. There are women who do not fear failure as much as they fear being fully seen. They know how to work quietly, how to support others, how to carry responsibility without drawing attention to themselves. But when the moment comes to speak clearly, show their work, name their desire, or stand in the center of their own life, something inside them hesitates. Not because they lack ability, because visibility has not always felt safe. Perhaps she learned early that confidence made other people uncomfortable, that speaking honestly could be called arrogance, that success might invite criticism, that beauty could attract resentment, that intelligence should be softened, hidden, or expressed only in ways that did not threaten anyone. So she became skilled at shrinking without appearing to shrink. She added uncertainty to statements she knew were true. She gave credit away before anyone asked. She turned accomplishments into accidents. She minimized her efforts so others would not think she believed too highly of herself. Even her joy arrived with an apology. She said it was nothing when it had required years. She said I was lucky when she had been disciplined. She said anyone could do it when she knew how much courage it had taken. This kind of self-erasure is often praised as modesty. But humility does not require a woman to lie about her gifts. She can be grateful without becoming invisible. She can acknowledge what she has done without claiming she did everything alone. She can shine without declaring herself superior to anyone. The shame of being seen often begins when a woman confuses visibility with danger. Perhaps people withdrew when she became more confident. Perhaps someone she loved mocked her ambition. Perhaps she was told she was too loud, too intense, too educated, too independent, too expressive, too much. Those words may have entered her before she had the strength to question them. So she began adjusting herself to remain acceptable. But too much often means something different when translated honestly. Too aware for manipulation. Too expressive for someone committed to emotional silence. Too ambitious for a person who felt safer when she doubted herself. Too alive for a relationship that depended on her becoming smaller. This does not mean every criticism is false. Growth still requires self-examination. A woman can be confident and still listen. She can be powerful and still apologize when she causes harm. She can take up space without taking space away from others. But she must stop treating another person's discomfort as automatic evidence that she has done something wrong. Sometimes discomfort appears because truth has changed the balance. When she speaks after years of silence, those accustomed to deciding for her may call her difficult. When she celebrates herself after years of self-neglect, those who benefited from her insecurity may call her self-centered. When she succeeds beyond the limits others imagined for her, they may tell her she has changed. She has. That is not a confession. It is a fact. The practical inner shift is to stop reducing herself before anyone has even asked. She notices the disclaimers. I may be wrong, but this probably is not important. I do not want to sound full of myself. Sorry, I just wanted to say. Then she removes what is unnecessary. She says what she means. I have an idea. I am proud of this. I worked hard for this opportunity. I disagree. I would like to be considered. The words may feel exposed at first. Her body may tighten. She may expect rejection, but each clear sentence teaches her that visibility can be survived. She does not need to become louder than her nature. Some women shine through stillness, some through leadership, some through art, care, thought, service, humor, business, or quiet moral courage. The goal is not performance. It is congruence. Her outer life should no longer deny what is alive within her. A woman may also hide because she fears being judged by those who knew an earlier version of her. People may remember when she lacked confidence, when she made different choices, when she tolerated what she would no longer accept. She may fear that stepping forward now will look foolish because she did not do it sooner. But growth does not become less valid because it arrived late. A tree does not apologize because it needed another season before it bloomed. She is not required to remain loyal to a smaller identity simply because other people are familiar with it. She is allowed to outgrow the role they assigned her. She is allowed to become visible before she feels entirely ready. Readiness is not always a feeling. Sometimes it is the decision to stop hiding behind preparation. She may have spent years improving something privately while telling herself it was not yet good enough to share. Another course, another revision, another promise that she will begin when she becomes more certain. Perfection can become a respectable form of fear. It allows her to remain hidden while calling the hiding discipline. There is wisdom in preparation, but there comes a point when more preparation no longer serves the work. It serves avoidance. The next step may be sending the application, publishing the piece, speaking in the meeting, starting the project, wearing what reflects who she is now, letting herself be photographed without criticizing every detail, allowing praise to land without pushing it away. Receiving a compliment can be a practice in visibility. She does not have to contradict it. She can simply say thank you. Those two words may feel small, but they end an old pattern. She no longer argues against every person who sees something beautiful in her. She no longer rushes to dim the moment before it becomes emotionally dangerous. She lets herself be witnessed, not consumed, not objectified, not defined by attention. Witnessed. There is a difference. The woman who no longer apologizes for her light does not demand that everyone admire it. She accepts that some will misunderstand her. Some will compare. Some will withdraw. Some will only feel comfortable with her when she doubts herself. She cannot control that. Her work is not to become universally acceptable. Her work is to become internally honest. She asks, am I hiding because this moment requires wisdom or because an old wound is afraid of being seen? That question helps her distinguish privacy from shame. Privacy is chosen. Shame is imposed. Privacy protects what is sacred. Shame tells her that what is sacred should not exist. She can keep parts of herself private without pretending they are unworthy. She can choose her audience without silencing her voice. She can move carefully without disappearing. Her beauty deepens each time she allows her life to reflect the truth of who she has become. She does not need to announce her transformation. It appears in the way she stops laughing at jokes that diminish her, in the way she names her contribution, in the way she accepts opportunity without asking whether someone else would be more comfortable if she declined, in the way she refuses to apologize for being both soft and formidable. A woman's light is not arrogance. Arrogance needs to stand above others. Light simply refuses to remain buried. And when she finally understands this, she begins to see that becoming visible is not the end of her journey. She must also learn how to remain rooted when praise arrives, criticism follows, and the world tries once again to tell her who she should be. A woman who has finally allowed herself to be seen must learn another difficult lesson. Visibility does not guarantee understanding. Some people will praise her. Some will question her. Some will admire what they once ignored. And some will try to reduce her to the version of herself that made them more comfortable. This is why confidence cannot depend entirely on applause. Praise feels warm, especially after years of feeling unseen. It can seem like proof that she was right to step forward, that her gifts are real, that her voice matters. But applause can become another form of permission if she begins needing it before she trusts herself. The woman who once shaped her life around rejection may later shape it around approval. The audience changes. The dependence remains. She may begin watching closely to see what receives the most attention. Which version of her is most celebrated? Which words make people comfortable? Which truths cause them to withdraw? Without noticing, she may start editing herself again. Not to avoid criticism this time, to preserve praise. This is a quieter form of shrinking. She is visible, but no longer entirely free. A woman's light becomes steady when she can appreciate recognition without allowing it to become her identity. She can be grateful when people admire her work. She can receive kind words without pretending they do not matter. But she must remember that praise is information, not a foundation. It can tell her that something connected. It cannot tell her the full measure of her worth. The same is true of criticism. Criticism may contain truth. It may reveal a blind spot. It may help her grow. But not every negative reaction is wisdom. Some criticism is simply discomfort wearing the language of concern. Some people will call her distant because she no longer answers every demand. Some will call her proud because she stopped making herself smaller. Some will say she has changed because they no longer recognize the woman who once accepted less. She must learn to examine criticism without automatically submitting to it. The practical inner shift begins with 3 questions. Is this coming from someone who knows me honestly? Is there something specific and useful here? Does this criticism invite growth or merely pressure me to return to an old role? These questions protect her from 2 extremes. She does not become so defensive that she rejects every correction. And she does not become so uncertain that every opinion changes her direction. A rooted woman can listen without collapsing. She can say, there may be truth in this without concluding everything about me must be wrong. She can apologize when necessary without apologizing for her existence. She can adjust her behavior without abandoning her identity. This balance is one of the marks of mature confidence. She no longer needs to be perfect in order to remain worthy. For many women, criticism feels dangerous because it awakens older wounds. One comment can become every voice that ever told her she was too much. One rejection can become every moment she was not chosen. One misunderstanding can make her feel that all her growth has disappeared. But growth does not vanish because someone fails to recognize it. A tree does not lose its roots because a passerby dislikes its shape. She must allow her inner life to become deeper than the reactions around her. This requires a relationship with silence. Not the punishing silence she once endured, a different silence. the kind in which she can hear herself after the noise of other people's opinions has faded. She may need to step away before responding. She may need to resist defending herself immediately. She may need to ask whether the criticism touches truth or merely touches an old wound. Not every painful comment is accurate, and not every accurate comment is an attack. Discernment helps her tell the difference. She also learns that praise can be misleading when it rewards the parts of her that are easiest to consume. People may celebrate her strength while ignoring her need for rest. They may admire her generosity while expecting endless access. They may praise her independence because it means they never have to support her. She must be careful not to become trapped inside the qualities others applaud. Strength should not become a prison. Competence should not become permission for everyone to lean on her without asking what she carries. Beauty should not become an obligation to remain pleasing. Kindness should not become a contract requiring constant availability. She is more than the parts of herself that receive approval. The woman who no longer apologizes for her light also stops apologizing when that light changes form. Some seasons will be outward. She will speak, create, lead, and be visible. Other seasons will be quieter. She will retreat, rest, reconsider, and protect what is still becoming. Both are valid. She does not owe the world constant brightness. Even light has rhythm. Morning does not apologize for arriving slowly. Evening does not apologize for becoming still. Her worth is not reduced in seasons when she is less productive, less social, less admired, or less certain. This is important because women are often praised most when they are useful, when they are achieving, helping, performing, carrying. But a woman is not valuable only when she is impressive. She is not a machine designed to produce reasons for others to admire her. She remains worthy when she is tired, when she is learning, when she has no answer, when she chooses privacy over performance, when she needs support instead of offering it. Rooted confidence allows her to live beyond the demand to prove herself continuously. She does not need every room to recognize her. She does not need every person to understand her. She does not need to correct every false story. There are misunderstandings she may clarify. There are others she must release, not because truth does not matter, because her peace matters too. She learns that constant self-defense can become another form of captivity. Sometimes she says what is necessary once. Then she allows character, consistency, and time to speak. A woman who is secure in herself does not chase every person who misreads her. She knows that explanation is meaningful only when the listener is open to understanding. She does not place sacred truth before people committed to distortion. Her light becomes quieter and stronger. It no longer flashes in response to praise. It no longer disappears in response to criticism. It remains, not rigid, not untouched, rooted. She can be celebrated without becoming dependent, corrected without becoming ashamed, misunderstood without becoming lost. And as she learns to stand in that steadiness, she begins approaching the deepest freedom of all. The ability to belong to herself so fully that neither rejection nor admiration can persuade her to leave. To belong to herself is not to become unreachable. It is not to close her heart, refuse support, or convince herself that she no longer needs anyone. It is something quieter. It is the decision to stop leaving herself whenever another person threatens to leave. For years, abandonment may have felt like an emergency. The slightest distance changed the atmosphere inside her. A delayed response became a warning. A change in tone became a question she could not stop answering. She rushed to repair what she had not broken. She softened her truth. She apologized before understanding whether she had done anything wrong. She became willing to negotiate almost anything except the possibility of being left. But each time she abandoned her needs to prevent someone else's departure, she taught herself a painful lesson. Their presence mattered more than her integrity. This is how fear can make a woman betray herself while calling it love. She may not have understood what was happening. She only knew that separation felt unbearable. So she worked harder, explained more, forgave faster, and accepted conditions that slowly weakened her. She believed the greatest danger was losing the relationship. She did not yet see that she was losing herself inside it. Belonging to herself changes the meaning of loss. It does not make rejection painless. It does not prevent grief, but it gives her somewhere safe to return when another person walks away. She no longer falls into complete emptiness because her identity is not entirely held in someone else's hands. She has an inner home now, a place made from truth, boundaries, memory, values, and promises she has learned to keep. Someone may leave that home, but they cannot take it with them. This is why self-belonging is deeper than independence. Independence says, I can survive without you. Self-belonging says, I will not disappear in order to keep you. One is about capability. The other is about loyalty to the self. A woman may be capable of managing everything alone and still be emotionally unfaithful to herself. She may earn money, solve problems, raise children, lead others, and carry enormous responsibility while privately begging for crumbs of affection. Strength in one area does not automatically heal abandonment in another. She must learn to remain with herself precisely when fear is loudest. When someone withdraws, she does not immediately chase. She pauses long enough to hear what the withdrawal awakens. Is she responding to the present situation, or to every previous moment when she felt forgotten? Is she seeking honest communication or trying to make the anxiety disappear at any cost? This pause is not passivity. It is the space in which dignity can speak before panic takes control. The practical inner shift is simple, though not always easy. Before she asks, how do I keep them? She asks, what would keeping them require me to abandon? Would she have to ignore another lie? Accept another season of silence? Pretend that inconsistency no longer hurts? Lower a boundary she created for good reason? Become less expressive, less honest, less alive? The answer matters, because not every relationship is lost through separation. Some are lost the moment a woman can remain only by becoming someone else. There was a time when she believed love meant being chosen at any cost. Now she understands that the cost matters. If being chosen requires her to distrust herself, hide her needs, and apologize for her light, then the choice is not love. It is an arrangement built around her disappearance. A woman who belongs to herself does not offer disappearance as proof of devotion. She may compromise. Healthy relationships require flexibility. She may change her mind, reconsider a position, and make room for another person's needs. But compromise is different from self-erasure. Compromise allows two people to remain present. Self-erasure leaves only one person fully represented. She begins noticing the difference in her body. Compromise may feel uncomfortable, but it does not make her feel invisible. Self-betrayal leaves a particular heaviness. She hears herself agreeing, but something inside her goes quiet. She smiles, yet resentment begins forming beneath the smile. She says, "It is fine," while knowing it is not. Belonging to herself means she no longer ignores that silence. She turns toward it. She asks what truth has been pushed aside. Perhaps the truth is that she is tired. Perhaps she does not want to continue. Perhaps she loves the person but no longer trusts the relationship. Perhaps she is afraid that honesty will produce an ending. And perhaps honesty will. That possibility must be faced. Sometimes the truth does not save a relationship. It saves the woman inside it. This is the kind of courage that rarely looks dramatic. There may be no grand speech, no public declaration, no moment when she feels completely certain. She may speak with a trembling voice. She may cry after holding the boundary. She may miss the person and still refuse to return. Courage is not the absence of attachment. It is the refusal to let attachment become authority over her dignity. There will be moments when she wonders whether belonging to herself has made her too difficult to love. She may see others accepting what she no longer can and question whether her standards are costing her companionship. But standards do not make healthy love impossible. They make unhealthy access more difficult. The people who required her confusion may leave. The people who benefited from her silence may complain. The people who felt powerful when she doubted herself may no longer know how to relate to her. This can feel like rejection, but not every rejection is evidence that she should change. Sometimes it is confirmation that she has changed. She no longer offers unlimited patience to repeated harm. She no longer calls emotional absence a complicated kind of love. She no longer stands outside someone else's heart asking for permission to exist within it. She brings her own belonging with her. This allows her to love more honestly. She can say, "I want you," without saying, "I cannot exist without you." She can say, "Your presence matters," without making it the sole evidence that she matters. She can grieve if the relationship ends without converting the ending into proof that she is unworthy. Her light becomes beautiful because it is no longer begging anyone to stay. It welcomes those who can meet it with respect. It releases those who demand that it dim, and it remains with her through both arrival and departure. The deepest promise a woman can make is not that she will never be hurt again. It is that hurt will no longer persuade her to abandon herself. In the next part, she will begin to understand what true closure looks like, not the apology she may never receive, but the inner decision to stop allowing an unfinished ending to keep writing her life. Closure does not always arrive through a final conversation. Sometimes there is no apology, no honest explanation, no moment when the person who hurt her finally understands the weight of what they did. They may leave behind silence, unanswered questions, and a story that seems to end in the middle of a sentence. For a long time, she may believe she cannot heal until that sentence is completed. She waits for them to name the truth, to admit that she mattered, to acknowledge that their inconsistency wounded her, to say that she was not imagining the distance, the betrayal, the neglect, or the slow disappearance of care. She believes their honesty will release her. But a person who avoided accountability during the relationship may not suddenly become courageous at its end. And if her peace depends on their courage, she may remain imprisoned by someone who is no longer even present. This is one of the final lessons of self-respect. Closure is not always an answer received. Sometimes it is an answer accepted. She accepts that the pattern was real, even if they continue denying it. She accepts that their silence is information. She accepts that someone can know they hurt her and still refuse to take responsibility. She accepts that she may never hear the words she deserved. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean what happened was fair. It means she stops arguing with reality because reality did not give her the ending she wanted. For years, longing may have kept reopening the case. She replayed conversations, studied details, imagined better questions she might have asked, constructed speeches in which she finally explained the pain so perfectly that they could no longer misunderstand. But some people do not misunderstand. They simply do not want to be accountable for what understanding would require. No perfect sentence can create empathy in someone committed to avoiding it. No final message can force emotional maturity. No explanation can make another person value what they benefited from undervaluing. This realization may hurt, but it also returns her power. She no longer has to keep polishing the truth before presenting it to a closed heart. She does not need their agreement to believe her own experience. She does not need their remorse to validate her grief. And she does not need their return to prove that her absence has value. The practical shift begins when she stops asking questions that only the other person can answer and begins asking questions that can guide her forward. Instead of, "Why was I not enough?" she asks, "Why did I remain where I was repeatedly made to feel insufficient?" Instead of, "Did they ever truly love me?" she asks, "Was the love they offered healthy enough for me to live inside?" Instead of, "Will they regret losing me?" she asks, "What will I regret losing if I continue waiting for them?" Instead of, "Why did they choose someone else?" she asks, "Why would their choice be allowed to define the woman I become?" These questions do not erase sorrow. They turn sorrow toward wisdom. She may never know every motive. Perhaps they were afraid. Perhaps emotionally limited. Perhaps selfish. Perhaps confused. Perhaps they cared, but lacked the character to care responsibly. Understanding every reason is not necessary for her release. The outcome already told her what she needed to know. She was harmed by the relationship as it existed. Her dignity weakened while trying to sustain it. Her light became something she apologized for. That is enough information to choose differently now. Closure may look like deleting the unfinished message, returning the object she kept as an excuse to reconnect, removing herself from the cycle of checking, interpreting, and hoping. It may mean allowing an anniversary to pass without reaching out. It may mean hearing their name and refusing to turn the moment into a judgment against herself. Sometimes closure is not a feeling. It is a practice. She may have to close the door more than one. In memory, in imagination, in moments of loneliness, in dreams, where the person finally becomes who she needed them to be. Each time she returns to what is true, they may have mattered. She may have loved them deeply, and the relationship may still have required too much of her dignity. These truths can coexist. She does not need to erase the love to justify the leaving. She does not need to hate someone in order to stop waiting. She does not need to pretend the memories mean nothing. Closure is not the destruction of tenderness. It is tenderness no longer being used against her. There may be days when grief returns after she believed it was finished. A song, a familiar place, a season of the year, a moment of joy she once imagined sharing with them. She may feel the old ache and wonder whether she has failed to move on. But grief returning does not mean the door has reopened. It means memory still lives in a human heart. She can feel it without following it. She can honor what the moment awakens and still remain loyal to the life she has built. Healing is not forgetting. It is remembering without losing herself. And perhaps after all this time, she begins to see that the deepest wound was never simply that someone failed to choose her. It was that she took their failure and used it as evidence against her own light. She began apologizing for her sensitivity because they called it excessive. She hid her needs because they treated them as burdens. She softened her intelligence, her standards, her joy, and her voice because they were more comfortable with the version of her who doubted herself. But she is no longer that woman, not because she has become invulnerable, because she has become honest. She knows that beauty is not the absence of pain. It is the refusal to let pain make her disappear. Her beauty is in the way she remains tender without becoming available to harm, in the way she can love without abandoning discernment, in the way she can acknowledge regret without building a home inside it, in the way she can stand alone without treating solitude as proof that she is unwanted. A woman is most beautiful when she no longer apologizes for her own light because she finally understands what that light contains. It contains the voice she once silenced, the boundary she once feared, the wisdom she paid for with experience, the softness she protected from becoming bitterness, the courage to leave what she once begged to keep. The grace to forgive herself for every year she did not yet know how. She no longer carries her light in her hands as though someone else must decide whether it belongs to her. She wears it quietly, without performance, without asking permission. She does not need every person to recognize it. She recognizes it now, and that recognition changes everything. She no longer enters relationships asking, "Will you choose me?" She asks, "Can we choose one another without either of us disappearing?" She no longer asks, "Am I beautiful enough to be loved?" She asks, "Is this love mature enough to honor the life within me?" She no longer begs indifference to become devotion. She no longer calls uncertainty romance. She no longer mistakes being desired for being safe. She has learned that her light is not a bargaining tool. It is not something she trades for affection. It is not something she reduces to prevent abandonment. It is the truth of her presence. And anyone who enters her life must meet that truth without asking her to apologize for it. She may still have difficult days. She may still question herself. She may still want love, companionship, reassurance, and a place to rest her heart. But now she wants these things without surrendering her belonging. She knows she can desire someone and still walk away from disrespect. She can miss someone without returning. She can love someone and admit that love is not enough. She can be alone without becoming abandoned by herself. That is her restoration, not perfection, not invulnerability, self-belonging. She has come home to the woman she kept leaving behind. And perhaps this is the beauty no mirror can fully show. A woman who has stopped begging the world to confirm her worth carries a peace that attention cannot create and rejection cannot easily take away. She is not shining to prove that she survived. She is shining because she has finally stopped standing in the way of her own light.